Welcome back to the Daily Move. Today it's all about the cyclist. We're going to go over some stretches you can do either before, mid, or after your ride, and we're going to orientate it all around the bike. So my suggestion for this is to pick between 6 and 8 of your favorite exercises that you see, and you're going to screenshot it so that you have it on your phone as a reminder to do it throughout the ride. Of course, if you wish to screenshot every move, feel free to do that. Usually if it gets too much on your phone, you're not going to necessarily do it. So pick a few. I'd much rather you do a few than none. For screenshotting, if you have an iPhone, an earlier version, you want to hit the button that's on the right side and the middle one. If you click those two at the same time, it's going to take a snapshot of your screen, and that way you can save it. If you have a newer iPhone, I believe it's the plus sign on the left side and then also the button on the right, and then hold those two together. All right, guys, we're going to get started here in 3, 2, and 1. So the first move that we're going to do here is we're going to do a hip hinge. So I'm pushing my hips back, and you're going to feel this stretch into the back here. So what I'm doing is I'm sinking my chest through down to the ground, and I'm sinking into those shoulder blades, feeling a nice stretch onto my back. In order to come up, I'm pushing my arms down into the bike, and then again, sinking deeper with every repetition. Next, what I'm doing is I'm transferring my right hand onto my left hand, and then I'm sinking my right hip away from that left hand, feeling a nice side body stretch all the way down that right side. And all I'm doing here is switching sides just to get a nice stretch into the left. So this next stretch here, what I'm doing is going into a hip hinge, really pushing that bike away here. This is going to work on some shoulder flexibility. You're going to get a little bit of a stretch into the back and some stretching into the hamstring. We're going to get deeper into the hamstring later. So next we've got our IT band here. We're crossing one leg over the other. Here we're working the back leg, so the leg that's a little bit straighter. I'm pushing my hip bone towards the camera actually, and then leaning a little bit more over my bent knee to feel a stretch into that glute. So next we've got the calf stretch here. So you're going to want to bring that pedal down to the bottom. And then I've got my forefoot. I get the front part of my foot onto the pedal there, and I'm allowing the heel to drop down to the ground to feel a stretch into the calf. So play around with your body position here. The more you lean forward over top of that toe with your body, the deeper stretch you're going to get. I find after biking, my calves get pretty tight. So usually I have to ease into this stretch. So this next stretch here, we're trying to do a CatCow. So my hands are on the handlebar, and I'm kind of turning the bike a little bit so that I've got space so that I'm not hitting my seat. And we're performing a CatCow here. So what an angry cat is kind of when a cat hisses, it brings its back straight up towards the ceiling. That's what we're doing here. And then the cow, we're allowing the back to sag. So we're working flexion extension. It's up to you if you want to add in the neck. So I found doing this exercise, I could play around with my back, or I could get into my shoulders. To get it into the shoulders, I had to lean more over top of the shoulder or the handlebars. And I'm pushing my bike away, getting it higher up between the shoulder blades instead of into the lower back. Again, depends on where you're tight after your ride or before your ride on where you want to get that, or you could do both. So next we've got a neck stretch here. So I'm holding the bike with one hand. And what that's actually gonna do is pull that shoulder down away as you pull the ear to the opposite side. So you can see here, I'm moving my nose as I rotate my neck down. This is gonna hit different parts of the neck for that stretch. And then what I'm gonna do is rotate that neck back up, looking up towards the sky, and then coming back down. So again, you can just find one spot that you enjoy having that stretch, or you can do what I'm doing here and rotating through that, hitting a bunch of different spots into the neck with this rotation. Being very gentle on how you're pulling your neck. You never want to force anything. It should just feel like a nice stretch. So here we're switching sides. Again, I'm holding the bike down, which is going to bring that shoulder down, creating a deeper stretch. So next we're gonna go into the pecs here. So I'm grabbing my bike seat and I'm turning my body away. You should feel this in your chest, maybe your shoulder. Now I am kind of pushing the bike back away from my butt there in order to feel a deeper stretch. So switching sides here, just grabbing onto the handlebars now. And then again, I'm rotating my body away and then letting the bike fall away from me to feel a better stretch into that pec. So this option here, you can get both your chest muscles and a little bit of a back extension here. So my hands are on the handlebar and onto the seat stem. And what I'm doing here is I'm opening up my chest, letting the bike kind of fall away, creating some traction. And then I do have a slight back arch going on here as well. You don't have to do the back arch to get the pec stretch, but because you're always in that flex position riding, sometimes it's a good idea to go into that extension. So here I'm going to show you 3 different options to get into the hamstrings. If you're really flexible, you can bring your foot up onto that bike seat. If you're even more flexible than what I'm showing here, you can actually bend that bottom leg and then allow your belly button to lie flatter onto that thigh bone. This is the end of my range here. So be careful with this. Your bike does have 2 wheels. I know that sounds obvious, but it can roll away during this stretch. So just be mindful of that. We don't want to create any injuries because of you're in a vulnerable position. All of a sudden the bike rolls out. So if the bike seat is not available for you, just creating too much tension into that hamstring, you can bring it down onto that middle bar of that bike. And if that's still too intense, what you can do is you can kick that leg in front of you, have your toes reaching towards the ceiling, and then just lean your butt backwards to feel a stretch into the hamstring. So that's 3 different options you can do depending on how tight your hamstrings are. So next we have a quad stretch here. So you're using your bike as balance. What you want to do here is you want to tuck your pelvis under and then pull your knee so that your knee is in line with your other knee. Squeezing the glute a little bit, you're gonna feel a big stretch there. Just watch that you don't get too big of a back arch in this exercise or this stretch, because we are trying to focus on that quad. So next we have a figure 4 glute stretch. This isn't the best angle here, but what I'm doing is I'm crossing one leg over the other, and then I'm sitting back into a chair using that bike as balance. And I'm feeling a stretch in the glute of the leg that's on top. So here I'm just changing the angle so that you get a better view, so you can see that I cross the leg over. And again, I'm using my bike as balance here so that I can get into a deeper stretch. Now you can take your hand and push down onto the knee to feel a deeper stretch. So next we've got a hip flexor stretch here. So the leg that's closest to the bike is going to be back. The one that's furthest away is going to go into a lunge. You're going to cross your arm over to hold on to the bike, pushing the hip that's closest to the bike even closer to the bike as you take that hand, reach up to the ceiling and kind of arc over. You should feel a stretch here, kind of in that groin hip flexor area. Now, I'm not spending a lot of time in these stretches, but I recommend that you do. I just know that you're not going to be watching this clip as you bike, so you're going to be screenshotting this and then holding it between 30 to 60 seconds, depending on how long you want to sit in that stretch for. I'm just trying to hold these long enough so you've got enough time to screenshot the exercises or stretches that you want to try. So what I'm doing here is I'm going into a deep squat, and I'm doing another cat-cow variation here. And I'm actually pulling up on the bike, not hard enough that the wheel comes off the ground, but enough that it puts a little bit of traction to feel a deeper stretch into the back. And now what I'm doing is I'm going into a hip external rotation. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to turn the foot out to feel a stretch into the hip socket there. And now I'm creating a spinal rotation. So I'm holding on to the bike, turning, opening up the spine. Again, I'm only doing a few repetitions here. I would recommend doing anywhere from 8 to 10 repetitions. Here I'm only doing 3. So this is similar to the first exercise that we showed before, just a different variation. Because your arms are closer together, it's just going to be a more advanced stretch. And what you could do is you could go from the wide stretch into the more narrow one. So now we've got some hip mobility here. So I'm using my bike more to support myself through this as I create these hip rotations. So what you're doing is you're lifting your knee towards your chest, then you're bringing your knee out to the side, internally rotating it, and then bringing it back down. So you can take out that rotation if you want and just do hip circles. Again, it's your option. So now what I'm doing here is my leg is just dangling there and I'm rotating my leg bone in and out. So you can see the kneecap turning in to face the other kneecap and then away. And now I'm just repeating this on the opposite side. So bringing that knee up to the chest, bringing it out to the side, internally rotating, and then bringing the knee back down. So again, I'm only doing a few repetitions here, but I'd probably do between 5 and 8 if this was one of the exercises that I was choosing to do that day. And then same thing, I'm doing that hip internal, external rotation. So now be careful with this because you can hit the pedals, and if you do that, that hurts a lot. So just be mindful of where your limb is and where your bike is, but what I'm doing here is some hip swings. So now we're doing kind of a pigeon stretch here. So again, we're getting into the glute, putting one leg up onto the bike, and then I'm hip hinging. So I'm actually leaning forward. It just doesn't look like that because I don't have a lot of range there. My glutes are quite tight. So I noticed without changing sides of the bike, you can see how my knee's being supported by the stem of the handlebar there. That's going to reduce or restrict the range. So depending if you need a deeper stretch or not, just be mindful of that. But when I switched legs here, I probably should have switched sides of the bike. So this is very similar to that variation that we did where we had the leg crossed over in a figure 4 and sitting back. So now what we have here is frontal leg swings. So again, using that bike as balance, being mindful that the bike does move. You can see that I kind of stuttered there because it kind of moved. So that concludes the series using the bike. I'm going to throw in some extra exercises here without the bike. So here we have a roll down. So I'm tucking my chin, going down vertebrae by vertebrae. Once I get to the top, I'm going to put my hands together into a prayer position, reaching towards the ceiling, keeping my ribs down, and then going into a slight back bend. So again, tucking the chin, rolling down vertebrae by vertebrae, trying to get the back to reach towards the ceiling, hanging out at the bottom for a second or two before slowly rolling up, putting the hands together in a prayer position, reaching towards the ceiling, going into a slight back bend. So again, in this video, I only do 3 repetitions, and that's not because I would recommend only doing 3. It's because I'd want you to screenshot this and do this on your ride. So I just wanted to do enough of a variation where you understand what you're doing, but make sure to screenshot it and do it on your ride. So now my hands are still up into that prayer position, or you can go into kind of like a gun position where your pointer fingers are up. And I'm going into a side bend here. So I'm pushing my hips to one side, letting my arms fall to the other. This is going to feel like a nice side body stretch. And if you wanted to, you could actually do that forward roll, come up, do your back extension, come back to center, and then go from side to side. You can combine that. So here we're working on the pelvis. So I'm doing an anterior tilt and a posterior tilt, as you can see here. And now we're gonna work a hip hike. So you can see how one hip goes up higher and then I drop it down so that the other side can go up. So now we're gonna link it. So you're doing that pelvic tilt, side bending or hip hiking, going into that extension and then hip hiking onto the other side. So if you want, you can do a full rotation, just keep going in one direction. Make sure that you do work both. Or you can do what I'm doing here in the demonstration where I stop in the center and then rotate the opposite way. Really important that we get that lower spine, lower lumbar moving, and then same thing with your pelvis. So now we're gonna do the same with the thoracic. So the thoracic's where your rib cage is at. So you can see I'm going into flexion extension. This is what we work when we do those cat-cows. And now you can also side bend. So I'm bringing my rib down towards my hip bone. So you can do those individually where you just work flexion, extension, and then the lateral flexion, so that side bend. Or you can create this circle, this rotation around that spine. Same thing, you can continue going in one direction and then repeat the same amount of reps going in the opposite direction. Or you can do as I'm demonstrating here where I'm stopping in the center and then alternating directions. So going left and then right. So you can decide to be strict here and just work where the rib cage is, or what you can do is you can get the whole spine moving and then getting the hips involved here. So we're gonna go into a triangle pose here. I'm pushing with my bottom arm into my leg there that's in front, and then my top arm is rotating back. You should feel a stretch on the side of the body that's facing the ceiling. And then what I'm doing here is just getting an added hamstring stretch as I transition sides. Feeling a nice stretch into that side body again. So next you're gonna lay on the ground, you're gonna hug one knee into the chest, and then you're gonna pull that leg across your body, going into a spinal twist here. You may also feel a glute stretch. You can hang out there for as long as you want, or you can be a little bit more dynamic with it, holding it for a few seconds before switching sides. So now we're gonna get a different variation of the calf stretch. We did one earlier on the bike. This is the second option here. Going into a downward dog in yoga and pushing that heel down towards the ground to feel a stretch in the calf muscle. The calf muscle is on the lower leg there on the posterior side, so the back side. Now one stretch that I didn't show here, you could always find a bench as well. Stepping the front part of your foot onto the leg of the bench and then leaning forward. That's a third option to get into the calf. So now what we're doing is we're going from a child's pose position into a cobra or an up dog position, working that extension. You've just been in flexion for your ride or about to be in flexion for your ride, so it's important to go into the opposite direction. And now I'm pushing back into that child's pose. And you can see here, I'm actually curling my spine on purpose, going into a little bit of a spinal wave before ending up into that position there, into that spinal extension. Now, if you want to, in that spinal extension as you're holding that, you can also do neck circles as well. You can kind of get 2 for 1 there. So next we're gonna open up those shoulders. So especially if you're on a road bike, you're gonna be quite hunched over. So I have my fingertips facing away from my body. I'm opening up my chest, and then I'm using my legs to slide my butt away or closer to the heels in order to feel a deeper stretch into that chest. So this is gonna be a deeper variation than what we were doing on the bike, where we were facing away from the bike and letting the bike fall away from our body. So same muscles that we're stretching out, just a different variation. So this last stretch here, we're actually going to use our helmet, and we're going to slowly allow our spine to open up over top of it. So be gentle with yourself with this. It's not the most comfortable, but it will open up that chest. So you can continue to support your neck with your hands, or you can take your arms away and start moving it in different directions, whatever feels like it really opens it up. If you butterfly your arms, what I mean by that is allow the elbows to sink away from your ears there, you're going to feel a deep pec stretch. You can allow the arms just to float down by your side, palm up, and just experiment with what feels good here to feel that good stretch, good chest opener. It's best that you do this on the grass. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this on the pavement. I feel like that would probably wreck your helmet, and people watching you might think that you're in trouble. All right, guys, that's the end of it. Enjoy your ride if you haven't gone yet. And if you had a great ride, then I hope that stretching session at the end just helps you feel your best. All right, guys, happy riding. Take care. Bye.